Okay, next up is binding a receiver to the radio, and there's a couple things I want to talk about. I haven't reviewed the menus yet, but I'm just going to show this step. A, you cannot bind by powering up the radio using the display key because it's not going to transmit anything. As a matter of fact, if I go into the system menu here, and then I go down to modulation, which is where we do our bind, you will see that if I go down to to tell it to transmit the bind code, nada, zip. Okay, so you have to turn on the radio. Alright, so let's go ahead and turn on. Now real quick, again I was going to review the menus, but we want to go in and select our model. And I'm going to select Model 2. Alright, now one thing about this radio, and I'll talk about it when I'm going through the menus, is you don't have to power on and off to change models, okay? Anyway, needless to say, I'm on Model 2 and I'm going to show how to bind with that. So, let's go down to modulation now and come into this menu. Now the first thing you want to do is set, and let me zoom in on this so we can clearly see what we're seeing in the menus, and I'll zoom back out to bind. The first thing you want to do is select your modulation type. Okay, FH1 is for the other receivers. FH3 is for the receiver, the 92104 that came with this radio. PPM obviously is for older Airtronics receivers, etc., etc. So we want FH3. Alright, link number is kind of like model match on some radios, etc., etc. If you set this number, it is the link number to the receiver. So if other models do not have that same link number, they won't link with the receiver when you power on. Now the manual talks about setting this to match the model number. You don't have to do that, but I think the reason they're telling you that is so you don't mess up. And for instance, as you saw when I came in here, the default was 1, right? So if I end and select a different model, like Model 3, and then go back to modulation, you'll see that it's always 1. So what you kind of want to do to make sure you don't make a mistake and are able to operate a receiver that's in a model that's not your model number is they're kind of recommending you follow your model number here. So for instance, I'm going to go back to model select. I'm going to select Model 2. All right. And then I'm going to go back to modulation before I bind. Whoops. Sorry. Go back to modulation before I bind, and I'm going to set this to 2 so it matches my model number. Again, you don't have to do this. You can willy-nilly change whatever you want. They're just recommending that you follow this so you don't mess up and wind up having 2 receivers of different model numbers operating the same. So anyway, I picked 2. Then we're going to go down here and have our cursor ready here under bind code. Alright, so we're going to leave that right there for now. Now I'm going to back up. We're going to show you how to bind the receiver. Alright, move the radio to the right a little bit. So what I've got is I've got a 4.8 volt pack hooked to the switch harness, plugged in the battery port, okay? And what we're going to do is just take a little Allen wrench, and I'm going to hold down the bind button while powering up the receiver, and watch. Okay, as you'll see, now I held it down for a few seconds, and it's blinking. Now we don't want to wait too long, then go up here and press the no minus key. Now you'll see it fast blinking, and it says bind here. You'll also see the green LED blinking up top here on the radio, as you see. Alright, so once it's bound, the LED will go off. Now if I exit the modulation menu, you will see the LED is now solid. My LED is solid on the transmitter. I'm transmitting now, not in bind mode, and I'm solid. If you don't get a solid LED, it means you're not linked here. Okay, so now, again, I'm going to show this one more time to show that safety number, to show that you actually can bind 2 different model numbers to the same security code. So I'm going to go into modulation here, and I'm going to pick 1 and go back to 1. All right. As you see, my LED now went off. It's no longer talking because I changed my link number. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the receiver. I'm going to come back down here, get ready for the bind. I'm going to hold down the little button, turn on my receiver. Okay, as you see, it's slowly blinking. Go ahead and press the no minus key. Goes into bind, fast blinking, and we bound. All right, so now I'm going to end. LED comes on solid. Now remember, I'm on Model 2 right now, all right? But I left my bind code as 1. All right, now watch this. I'm going to go up to, you see I still got a good LED here. I'm going to go back up to Model Select. I'm going to select Model 1. Okay, I'm going to end. Check that out. I'm still transmitting, LED's green, and the receiver still works because of the fact that they both have the same link number, or safety number. So again, this to show you, don't make this mistake every time you bind. Go back to model select, go back to model 2. Okay, and now I'm going to change that code to 2. Okay, and you'll watch when I do, you'll watch when I do, now it's 2, LED goes off. This model number, because of the link number, is no longer working, and I have to rebind. So off with the receiver. Okay, did it again. Off with the receiver. Go power up the receiver, holding down the LED. Showing this for the third time, but I want you to understand. LED is blinking. I go down here and I go ahead and go into bind mode. LED fast blinks. Alright, once it goes out, exit bind mode, and we got a solid LED. Now again, just to repeat, because we selected in modulation menu code 2, if I now go back to model select and select model 1, alright, you will see the LED went out and I'm no longer connected, and that is because model 1 has a link number of 1. Hope that makes sense. That's kind of your model match. Use it. Don't leave everything on 1, as you saw by the default. If you select a different model by default, like model 4, you will see when I go to the modulation menu, it's 1. So what Airtronics is telling you in the manual is just change this number to match your model number. That way you never accidentally change models and have a different model with the same link code, thus being able to control it. It's kind of like model match, but it's up to you to make sure you get these numbers set for each individual receiver. By the way, you can bind more than one receiver in this way. So if I picked, say, model 4 and change this to model 4, I could bind as many receivers to model 4 if I wanted to with that 4 code, etc., etc. Anyway, hope that makes sense. That's how you bind the receiver, and we'll continue on.